Fearscape Media Network, exploring the unknown, one podcast at a time.
Hello, blanket huggers. Stefan here. On March 28th, 2021, Josh and I received a message through our website's Submit a Sighting form from someone claiming to be Terry R. Rist, the man referenced in Hell Here and the man interviewed by Alan Greenfield in Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts. From there, we received a number of cryptic emails filled with information on places to search for answers to the larger mystery of the quest and journey Josh and I have been on. So we decided, fake or not, we should take it seriously, as much of the information given panned out and definitely opened our eyes to many new things. So we enlisted the help of Astral Stew co-host Santosh and Fearscape guest and Greenfield's publisher Olaf Phillips. Together, the four of us have been digging deeper and deeper into not only the true identity of our source of paranormal gold, whether he is the Terry Rist or not, but also into the mystery of the information given us. It has led us to some amazing doors into such things as the secret space program, Hollow Earth, Darrow and Tarot, caves, underground bases, government cover-ups and conspiracies, and so much more. So if you would like to learn more about these emails, Terry's advice on where to look for more high strangeness, and our conversations and discoveries thus far, please become a monthly subscriber to our Patreon called Wristwatch at fearscapepodcast.com/support or patreon.com/fearscapepod. There you can get access to the emails themselves, the WhatsApp conversation about it all with Josh, myself, Santosh, and Olaf, and even any new clues that we have found. You can even join the investigation and add anything you have found to help us dive deeper into the mystery. You will also get access to other Fearscape-related things, such as extended interviews with guests not aired on the show, early access to Estes sessions with us and friends, and so much more. Wristwatch is a Patreon exclusive for our most dedicated fans. Join today and discover why the truth is now.
Thank you for tuning in to Fearscape Paranormal Podcast. We are on a journey to understand and to discover the phenomena that seems to exist all around the globe. We invite you to join us on this journey into the unknown.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another fantastic and frightening and filigree pedigree effigy episode of Fearscape Paranormal Podcast. I'm your host, Stefan Gerhardt. I am joined, as always, by the splendorific, superific co-host of mine, Mr. Josh Abraham Rutledge. Woo!
Woo! I was going to say charismatic as one of the descriptions of tonight's.
Too close to Baptist preacher.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you did just channel that in your voice there a little bit.
I did. And I apologize. Take it back.
But a little fitting for tonight's conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a really cool show tonight. We're going to be interviewing, getting spooky, as we like to say, with the author of Demons Among Us, M.R. Gorga. I'm super pumped because this book is frightening. It is true tales of true real life stories from the paranormal, but a lot of demons.
Yeah. And I'll say that I have to keep this book either face down or underneath another book because I'm afraid that the cover will scare my kids.
Scare the kids scares me. Like, I gotta flip it over. I don't like it. It is a spooky image there, but it's fascinating read. I'm super excited to talk to Mr. Gorga and talk about just all this jazz. But before we get into that, of course, we got to get into all the other things that we get into, like reminding people to like, share, rate, and review this podcast.
And if you happen to be listening to this particular episode on YouTube, because all of our podcast episodes are uploaded to YouTube automatically, please like and comment on the video. If you would do so, that helps our ratings on YouTube as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can subscribe on there too. We got, more than just the podcasts on there. We also have, some TV shows on there like Astral Stew that just dropped here last week with me, Santosh, and Josh. And surprisingly, and this was unintentional, the episode of Astral Stew is about demons. We
Right.
really philosophize about demons. So and so very interesting. It was totally, we recorded that a month ago, it's just crazy to me that we've got a guy that's super into demons, I guess.
Yeah.
But
So,
anyways.
Anyways.
Let's go ahead and get into our first segment of the week, of course, which is my favorite. The Encyclopedic Psychic Dictionary presents Psychic Word of the Week.
And now, the psychic word of the week.
Right, Psychic Word of the Week, of course, from the Encyclopedic Psychic Dictionary. Weird that this book itself sponsors this segment. And not like the published book, but just literally the book I have in my hand, sponsors this segment, just this one. But anyway, so June G. Bletzer, rest in peace, Honey Bear. She's the one that wrote this fantastic dictionary here. And I flipped through the pages like we normally do, and I landed on page, where'd it go? 471. And the phrase that caught my eyes here is it just says picked up. And what picked up says is to perceive psychic information by tuning into a person without any preparation or outward sign for this information. Can be used for one's personal protection, but is considered poor taste to frequently allow information about another's personal life enter one's mind without their permission. Usage being, for example, while I was waiting for you to come, I picked up that you would have some good news for me. So that kind of thing. So basically sensing, kind of intuition, yeah. Just picking up on something, especially on, I would say, an emotion. I picked up that you were going to be in a bad mood, so I brought you pizza.
Yeah, so that's just being observant. But anyways,
Right.
Well, when you first started talking about it, it made me think of the movie Unbreakable. Bruce Willis's character, he could just be when he goes to the train station and he's just trying to find somebody to help. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And he's just kind of standing there and people are brushing by him and he's picking up glimpses of things that they've done. So not to give too much away in the movie, but anyways,
Spoiler alert.
If you haven't seen it yet, it's a spectacular movie and I highly recommend it. Also,
I recommend Powder.
Powder is a good movie. I don't know if you were making a joke or not, but it really is a good movie.
It's just the movie I like to throw out there. Anyways, so I hope you guys have picked up on the fact that we're about to move to the next segment, which is the UAP sighting of the week. All right, Josh, UAP sighting, UFO sighting of the week. This gets even more crazy the closer we get to supposed disclosure, though the New York Times is already saying, I don't think it's going to be all that good. But yeah, so what do we got for the UAP sighting of the week?
So this actually happened on May 29th of this year, so just a few days ago. And this happened in Destin, Florida. And it goes a little something like this. I wasn't sure who to contact about this, but I figured I would try here. At 11:30 p.m. on May 29th in Destin, Florida, my girlfriend and I walked down to the beach to lay on a blanket and look at the stars. I sat for a couple minutes telling her about some astronomy facts and about white dwarfs and red dwarfs, that if you stare long enough you can actually see reds and blues and colors of the stars, etc. We started to realize that we thought was a star was moving around. It seemed
closer than the other stars, but still very high up. It was not an airplane or a satellite or the Starlink train. It didn't go in one direction, but meandered around the sky. It was very fast. If you were looking at a jet fly in the sky, let's say that would move an inch or two every 20 seconds or so. This was moving maybe 4 to 5 times that speed. There didn't really seem to be a pattern to its movement. After staring for some time, we realized there were many more like this. There were 20 to 30 of the objects that appeared to follow all along the coastline. They seemed to move independently, like the first we saw, randomly going north, east, southwest. Others in sets of 3 or 4 seemed to move as one in the same directional patterns. To confirm I wasn't seeing things or imagining this because it was simply unbelievable, I picked one and asked her to tell me which way she saw the movement. She described to me the same movements I saw, toward the ocean, to the right, etc. There were no red, green lights. It was too high to be a drone or airplane, and it was not consistent directional movement. The Starlink satellite train are all in a line in consistent directional movement. This was not that. They were never close to each other and seemed equal distant or cross-hatched across the coast. Honestly, we were shaking scared and did not stick around to see them leave. We watched for about 20 minutes and then left the beach. I am well educated and a scientific thinker, and I lean more towards a secret military action versus, say, aliens. The fact they were all along the U.S. coast and that there were so many of them, it seemed like it could be a space array or some kind of defense ships. But they were so fast, it could not be any publicly known flight technology. I tried to video it on my phone, but it was impossible. They were too high up. The photograph was light pollution from the hotels and condos. We are okay with the fact almost no one will believe us. But they were so fast, it could not be any publicly known flight technology.
Ooh. So, I lived and worked in Seaside, Florida for a summer in 2004, which is right in between Destin and Panama City. And I'm telling you, I remember thinking I saw all kinds of shit because we used to party on the beach and stuff at night, but we'd always be drinking. So I kind of wrote it off as kind of drinking. But man, because just the sky is big because you're looking out at the ocean and things like that. I'm with you. I'm with you, UAP person. I'm with you.
Well, and I remember, I think it was last year, I can't remember, last year, year before, family and I went to Vero Beach. Mm-hmm. And there was a night where it was like a movie night out on the lawn. And so the kids were watching Little Mermaid, I think. And I was looking up at the night sky and looking out over the ocean. And I was seeing some stuff moving around. And then I think we watched Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and Greer did something at Vero Beach.
Yeah, I remember that because we talked about that in our Close Encounters episode. Yeah,
and they had some stuff show up kind of above the water off in the distance. So, and it seems like the way things are pointing, the fact that there's been all these accounts that the government has confirmed have been over water, it kind of seems like maybe that is going to be the location where future, extensive UAP sighting events begin to occur, is kind of out over the oceans and things. So
nice. Very, very cool, man. Very, very cool. And I'm just telling you, that's a good one to have just been happening recently. And I'm telling you, I think with all the UFOs and UAP stuff being in the mainstream media and things like that, I think you're going to start to, before even disclosure, you're going to start seeing more and more people being okay with telling their stories of things that they've seen and things like that. We've definitely gotten hit with a lot of people being much more open about it.
Let me propose this, and I don't know, but is it possible that the number of people who previously were non-believers, who are now willing to be believers, or at least believe that there are things in the sky that we don't understand? We're not necessarily saying they're aliens, whatever, just but there are things in the sky we don't understand. Mm-hmm. That the number of people that are doing that have shifted so much that it has raised the frequency, and we are almost manifesting, if you will, not to say that they're not real, but we are encouraging, let's say, the entities that are operating or the whatever's behind the UFO. We are encouraging that phenomena to occur more frequently and more in the open because of the number of believers that are increasing in the world.
Very interesting. Yeah, maybe. It's a good thought. Very, very good thought. I'm proud of you.
Can I get my esoteric diploma now?
Yeah, it's going to be held in the ether and the astral plane. So there's a scavenger hunt.
It's my astral plane. It's my astral plane.
But anyways, thank you for that UAP sighting of the week. Let's go ahead and move to Creepy Ketchup so that we can go on and get to MR Gorga. So here we go with Creepy Ketchup.
Creepy Ketchup. Creepy Ketchup. Creepy Ketchup. Creepy Ketchup. Y'all, it's creepy.
Creepy Ketchup. I have jack shit nothing. I don't have anything. Just gonna throw it out there. I went to San Diego. I very much expected. We were in this old church. I expected something. Nothing. Was out on the water. Went whale watching. Was super cool. I didn't see any ghost ships. So
yeah,
nothing, man. It's been a pretty empty week. So,
but also you weren't really looking for any of it, right?
I was very much looking for it. Every
Really?
night I went out, I was looking out at the stars, trying to see something. Like I was looking. I was looking.
Huh. I just know that sometimes when I go on trips and stuff, I'm more focused about the trip and not so much about looking. So
Yeah, but you got kids. All I had to focus on was my wife and what we were eating. So
you had Kenobi with you?
I did.
He could have been like,
he's pretty
like,
chill.
Dad, play Tetris. Dad, play Tetris.
Oh, I wish he was like that. He's like, cool, sleep more. But you said earlier you had some stuff going
I did. I've had some odd things happening. So a couple nights ago, about a week ago, I went out. Actually, it was the night that we got on and talked to Olav on his podcast.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we were recently on Olav's podcast, me, you, and Santosh, and that was a fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow, what a good conversation talking about terrorists
and all that. So in preparation, because that was recording at 1 a.m. my time. So I was trying to keep myself awake. So I was out in my backyard. So I stepped out just to look at the night sky. Within seconds of stepping out, I saw 3 different lights moving around the sky. So I was like, well, I'm going to run inside and get my night vision camera, and I'm going to set that up. So ran inside, got it all figured, came back out. I saw all kinds of stuff moving around. I uploaded the video to YouTube, and some of the stuff that I saw moving around, I went back and watched the video. There was other things moving around in the video that I didn't even see at the time that I was recording the video.
I'll have to rewatch it. I've watched it a couple times, so that's interesting.
But I caught this like weird thing that was kind of like skipping across the sky, and then it disappeared. So anyway, so that was that stuff. I've gone out every clear night since then, but there's not been anything. I'll go out there and stand for 20 or 30 minutes and nothing. So it's like it was that night was the high activity night, and it just happened to coincide with the night that we were going to talk to Olav about all the stuff with terrorists.
Well, and you remember right before we started recording with Olav saw a sighting.
Right.
He was freaking the heck out. He was like, oh my God. And his co-host was like, yeah, we're trying to do something right now. And Olav's was like, shut up. I just saw a freaking UFO.
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of thinking back about my comment about if you're thinking about or willing it to happen, is that when it happens? I don't know. But then the other stuff that I've had is so today, preparing for the day of we're going to do this interview. I was working on some stuff around the house, and I came out of my daughter's bedroom, and the light in the bathroom that they use predominantly was flickering, like flashing really fast, but not a steady rhythm. It was more like, it almost seemed like Morse code. Although I didn't record it to try to go back and see what
You
was going on.
got some
but
Stranger Things action happening. You need to set up your Christmas lights.
I don't know. So I turned off the light and turned it back on, and it continued. So I was like, well, maybe it's a faulty bulb. So I took the bulb out, put it back in the same socket. As soon as I put it back in, it started doing that weird kind of flickering thing again. So I took it all the way out, took another bulb out of the same light, moved it to that position, put the bulb that was flickering back in that, the one I removed, no longer flickered. I swapped them back around again, no longer flickered.
I was going to say I have an electrician friend, but I don't know now. I don't know.
Well, and I have been all today, I have been seeing shadows moving around like in my peripheral. So maybe something was trying to get my attention. I don't know. I haven't yet, but probably before I go to bed tonight, I'm going to just walk around and kind of cleanse the house a little bit.
I mean, if you'd have just hung your Christmas lights up, like I said, you could have put a Ouija board out there and it'd have just done all the work for you.
Well, that's one thing I have not tried to do is a Ouija board without either yourself or Santosh.
Oh, just doing it by yourself?
Yeah.
It's tricky. I mean, the one time I did it when we were ghost hunting, it was an accident. I mean, I didn't even mean to. It was just, I don't know. It just kind of happened. But I mean, to me, it's almost like, it's like trying to read tarot for yourself. You can't trust it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'd feel like, am I moving the piece?
Exactly. I mean, and that's the sad part. I mean, then it's sad because then when you got other people, you can't trust it either because then you're like, well, was that Santosh? So it's a lose-lose situation. It's like UFO videos. It's like, oh, that's so fuzzy. How come it's never HD? Oh, that's HD. Gotta be special effects.
Yeah, exactly. You either have to trust it or you don't, right?
Yep. I guess so. But anyways, before we which thank you for sharing that, by the way. But before we get to our interview, we wanted to share an excerpt from Gorga's book, Demons Among Us, just to kind of give you a little taste of what this book is going to be about. It's various stories, but this is just an excerpt from one of the stories that we chose that we liked a lot. So we're going to go through this excerpt, and then we're going to take a very small break, and then we'll be back with M.R. Gorga. So stick around.
The sun had set when Elizabeth's tongue loosed at last, uncurled. For an incredible 5 days, Wednesday through Sunday, she was rendered speechless. Released from the cruel conjuration, Elizabeth collapsed into a spat of bitter tears, as she had done after each prior episode. Tormented, dejected, and depressed, Elizabeth again bemoaned her pathetic existence. Awash in her own sense of worthlessness, she anguished over how useless she felt. Once again, the grief had altered her appearance somehow. The hard edges vanished from her face, and what remained seemed more like a helpless child than a budding juvenile. Elizabeth pleaded for prayer, but were her appeals earnest? They sounded sincere enough, but Samuel couldn't tell for certain. Samuel was ill-prepared for what was next. The following night, after much of the same embittered remorse, Elizabeth, for whatever reason, suddenly grew chatty. Whether to unburden her soul, confess sins, or end the sufferings, Samuel could not tell. It mattered not. She was talking. Samuel wanted just one thing, the truth. And in a stroke of providence, as it pleased God to settle his thoughts, Elizabeth Knapp offered another addition to her already twisted tale. Careful to not interrupt, Samuel gave a ready ear as Elizabeth began cautiously, and then the words tumbled unshamedly.
I have traveled with the devil twice to Lancaster.
Elizabeth watched for his response, to which he crossed his arms. Only with his eyes did he say, "Continue." She did.
He shewed himself as a dog, a black one, with eyes on its back. On both journeys I followed on my horse whilst he led the way. Sometimes he would stop the beast as we went, and sometimes he would leap beside me or come leaping from behind. And when I did enter again the town, if there was any company around, he would go before about 40 roads as to not arouse suspicion. Once, somewhere between here and Lancaster, he drew me off course and into a bog alone, where he became a man. How it was possible, I know not. One moment he was a dog, a black dog, and next, a man. He held a great red book in his hand. There, he did argue with me over a compact and demanded I set my hand to his book, else he would kill me.
Ridiculous, but perhaps true, Samuel reasoned. The story rang equally bizarre and disturbing, but was there a kernel of truth to it? Samuel suspected there was.
The SCP multiverse is under constant assault, and destruction can come at any moment. Therefore, having just one database is a folly the Foundation can no longer accept. Join Dr. Kevin Milgram and SCP-073, Kane, as they create an oral history of the SCP Foundation, in Memories of Kane, an SCP story, hosted by Daniel Doremus. For should the Foundation fall, the unkillable first murderer of man will live on. New episodes drop every second Wednesday of the month on the Fearscape Media Network. Visit fearscapemedia.com for more information.
Good evening, dear friends. I am your headmister, Stefan Gearhart.
And I am your co-mister, the man with no name, Lance Wayne.
And we are the Misters of the Dark.
Join us as we discuss everything from horror books, films,
and even pretty princesses. Join us every other Tuesday in our dilapidated mansion. You never know what's going to happen next.
only on the Fearscape Media Network.
That's a good laugh. And thank you guys so much for sticking around after the break. We are back with the author of Demons Among Us, M.R. Gorga. Thank you so much for being on the show, sir. This is an absolute pleasure, as Josh and I both absolutely loved and feared this book.
Well, thanks for having me, and I'm glad you could experience the fear that is in the book.
Well, before we had you on, we were joking about how the cover itself is absolutely frightening, and you got to turn it upside down when you go to bed.
I mean, you are not the only one that tells me that, because I'm hearing from everyone, a lot of people, they say they turn this book over at night because it's so freaky. And it was
I mean, I lock it in a safe in the basement, you know,
with holy water.
That's smart.
And then I bury it in the backyard. I have to dig it up every time I want to read it, but, you know, it's worth it.
Well, it's funny because I've got blinds on my window, and so just enough light comes in and it illuminates that white face just enough that you could see it. And I'm like, I'm just gonna flip that over. That's fine.
It's very freaky. It's almost like that Jesus painting that follows you. It's kind of, but it's a freaky thing.
Yes, and it's a reminder why I love physical books. Is sometimes the cover can sell me before I even see what it is, and this is one of them, man. Like, just the cover grabs me, and I'm already ready to dig in.
Well, the face kind of reminds me a little bit about Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Oh yeah,
that kind of like artwork that's in that book is what it reminds me of.
That gritty style.
Yeah, I had a great cover designer. He really nailed it. I mean, it was
fantastic.
Trying to translate something that you see in the spiritual realm or in the supernatural realm, and convey it to an artist and say, this is this is what we're working with here. And he really did capture it very, very well. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic, man. Well, again, thank you so much for taking your time to be on here, man. We're very excited to chat with you just about this book, about you, about everything, man. Right, Josh? We've been talking about this for a minute. Yeah,
I mean, it's what really kind of, I don't know, we do a YouTube show, me and Stefan and our friend Santosh, called Astral Stew. We just talked about a bunch of weird, esoteric type things.
Yep.
And it's funny because we just did an episode talking about demons. Then, it just happens to coincide with us doing this interview here tonight. So one of the things that really I've been meaning to ask you, is why demons? Like, what was it that pulled you in?
Well, it's, you know what, once you have like so many experiences with, dealing with demonic entities and demonic attacks and assaults and, all kinds of, freaky things, strangulations, invisible hands and things of that nature. And once you experience, so many of these things, I thought that, to actually write the book just to inform people of what is happening in the realm that they cannot see.
Right.
And there's a world happening all around them that influences them, whether they know it or not. And these things are really happening. And I really kind of wanted to get the word out there with Demons Among Us, and just to tell what was happening in the spiritual realm all around,
Well, and it's really, so I think two things come to mind. Is one, these things are happening kind of like UFOs. They're happening whether you believe or accept them or not.
Yeah, that's right. They don't care if you believe or not.
Right.
They are who they are. It's,
Yeah, and then secondly, if you have a religious upbringing, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're predispositioned to having one of these encounters.
Well, right. Well, in my case, I became a follower of Christ at 26, and once I did that, that's when I started having these really demonic episodes, because anytime that you make a decision like that, or anytime if you're in ministry and you start climbing up or getting more powerful or more stronger in the faith, the more susceptible you are to these attacks, because what happens is that you change teams, so to say, and now you have to play against that team, and they're coming after you because they don't like that decision. And if you become influential, if you become strong in your faith, if you become powerful in prayer life, if you become anything of that, you become a threat, which makes you a target. And that's what happened in my case. And that's why I experience so many of these attacks.
Yeah, I can vibe with that a little bit. I can remember during my big Christian days too, I felt constantly attacked. Like, I can remember before I would even fall asleep, things like that. But it also reminds me very much of Ralph Sarchi. If you guys aren't familiar, he's the NYPD sergeant and detective that became a demonologist. Great book, Beware the Night, and then a movie with Eric Bana, Deliver Us from Evil. Fantastic story. But if you know anything about him, you know that it just gets worse and worse and worse. And he, as a cop, had this demon episode thing happen that he was on a case on that changed everything for him. And so again, here's another situation. It's kind of like not even necessarily religion, but it's like you open your eyes and you say, okay, I would like to learn more. You get ready, because you will.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that stuff is out there. It's real. And obviously there's a wide audience out there who doesn't kind of, believe it or whatever. And that's fine. They don't want you to believe.
Right.
That's how they keep functioning, because once your eyes get open, that's when you become a threat. And that's when you can stop, you can have influence over, you can have authority over them. And you can stop, many things and, spiritual plots of wickedness, so to say.
Well, and it kind of reminds me a little bit about Stefan, when you were at, was it Whispers?
The
when
Whispers
you got
Estate, yeah.
when you got the claw marks on you. I don't know if that was necessarily demonic, but there was definitely something there that was not pleased with your presence.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and you know my history. I mean, just half the things that MR mentioned there, I've been through with the invisible choking, the being held down and slapped, and many of these things throughout the years. You know, I mean, growing up Catholic. I mean, when I grew up Catholic, I mean, I was so absolutely frightened of those things. And, you know, now I look back with my paranormal eyes and I go, were those things there? Those things that I recall happening as a kid and things like that. Now you go, okay, maybe it did happen, you know?
Yeah, those things are real. And it happens to so many people, and people always kind of like slap the label on them, like, oh, you're crazy, or you're this, you're that. And it's been happening for thousands of years. Just if you think about the number of people this has happened to, if you look at it at a numerical level, it's impossible that all these people are crazy throughout centuries of these things happening.
Yeah.
So it's
and really if you roll all of paranormal stuff into one big bucket, if you will. So that's ghosts, demons, UFOs, aliens, Bigfoot, the whole, stuff that I didn't even mention there. If you roll all that up into one group, the amount of people who have seen or experienced any of those things far outweigh the number of people who can't or who haven't.
I agree. Especially those that haven't. There's a ton of people that haven't admitted to it either.
Yeah. And so the likelihood that many people are crazy is
Yeah. I mean, it's a really funny thing about this book is I really have people coming out of the woodwork who are really not comfortable telling their story, but for some reason they read the book and then they reach out to me and they say, this has happened to me. And they start sharing their story. And it was like, it's a really cool thing because these people thought they were crazy and or whatever. And you're not, I consider myself a pretty normal guy. I'm like pretty coherent and but even my own mother, even my own mother, she read the book and she says, I have a story I've never told anyone, no one. And this is what happened to me when I was 16 years old. And she went on to tell me this story. And I'm like, you're my mother. How could you not have said anything about it?
Where have you been?
Right.
It's like me. I found out I've been into like new agey, psychic stuff like that for a long time. And then come to find out my dad was in a commune for a summer. He did transcendental meditation. He did automatic writing, was astral traveling. And I'm like, where have you been? Why am I just now finding out about this?
Next thing he's going to tell you is that he was invited on a ship to go to Venus.
Oh, wow.
Right. But one of the... Oh, go ahead, Josh.
Well, I was just going to say that whole idea of people coming out of the woodwork. I mean, that's one of the things that we, one of the, I would say, main reasons that we do this show on a weekly basis is to encourage people to come out and share their story because they're not alone. And it's, we have to break the taboo that is associated with so much of this stuff.
Well, and it's interesting because they even send it to us and know that they've listened to the show since the get-go. We've got, 150 episodes and they're still like, so please don't think I'm crazy, but.
I know. Well, anything that's not understandable, anything that's not easily explained scientifically, that's when you just start slapping labels on people. You're crazy, or you're seeing things, or you're hallucinating. You're like, oh,
because we haven't found the science that understands it doesn't mean that science doesn't exist. It just hasn't been found out yet.
Well, they function beyond it.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, it's a superior intelligence is what we're talking about with demons. And so they function not as this world functions. They don't need to be figured out scientifically because they're beyond any natural means. They're supernatural beings. And we have our natural ways of going about things. But these are supernatural, superior intelligences that we're talking about here, and it's not going to be diagnosed by scientific, man's scientific methods.
Well, and even if there is a science that explains it, that science may be so far advanced from what we understand as science today, we would likely discount it and say it's magic or religious phooey or whatever the case may be. So
there's always a term that they slap on there. So
I mean, it's like, just look at the even the I even have to say it, the pseudoscience that is out there, that talks about energy and things like that, and looking at now the power of prayer, the science that's gone behind that to see the power of prayer or chanting or any of these things, intent really at the end of the day, there's a lot of, in my opinion, proof, but it's interesting how some of that has real scientific experimentation behind it, yet still gets considered pseudoscience.
Yeah, of course, because again, it's not an easily understandable thing.
Well, and
neither was fire.
Well, and I think a lot of people also, even, and I'll say this and probably get in trouble, but a lot of diehard scientists, I think, have made science their religion.
100%.
And so anything that threatens or goes against their understanding of the world through their science religion is a threat to their belief system, instead of an opportunity to have a greater understanding of what is happening in the world, the cosmos, the universe, whatever you want to say.
Right, of course, because they're going to see everything through the lens which they look through.
Correct.
Just like, you're going to see the world through the lens you look through, and the way I look through, or the way, Josh looks through. And so everybody's going to see through a different lens in a sense. So, so if you're looking through a purely scientific lens, you're going to be very, very skeptical until you get attacked by your own demon.
Right. And then it's all...
and that's when the gloves are off.
Isn't that the case? And that's why I'm a big horror movie fan, no surprise.
Yep.
That's why I always get so frustrated, because it's always the dad that's always like, "You are crazy, honey," or
always.
The parents that are both like, "The kid's crazy," until it happens to them, and then all of a sudden they're like, "You're right." Like, we could have solved this 8 weeks ago and moved out already.
Exactly.
Yeah, we could have solved it 30 minutes into the film, and then we'd have been
exactly. We could have prevented all this crazy stuff happening in the home.
Like that's
crazy.
That's it.
The things being thrown at you.
The ghosts of the Warrens showing up. I mean, we could have gotten away with all of that.
I feel like that's an indie film waiting to happen. Like they set up this whole demonic possession thing in the house. The parent goes to the family and says, "I'm being possessed by a demon," and the family just says, "Okay," and they pack up their shit and they move. I mean, it's just and that's the end of the movie.
That's a great sketch.
That's funny. That's the premise of a lot of them, right?
Well, but they don't do that. They go 2 hours into it, and then
Though sometimes, like Poltergeist, they call in people and they go, "Well, what is this?" Because it ain't gone super crazy, even though the kid got attacked by a clown, or the girl got sucked into the TV.
Yeah, really.
Whatever.
My kid got sucked into a TV, but that's okay. I'm just gonna live here a little longer.
We're call this short little psychic lady.
I'll figure it out. I'll work this thing out somehow. I've got to get her out of the TV.
So
but you know what?
I was going to say a question that I had, something we brought up on Astral Stew. We never know what we're going to talk about. It just kind of spurns out of a conversation, and demons kind of came up. But we were talking about demons and whether or not they are specifically delegated to Christianity, or do we take a look at demons being a bigger, older kind of thing that maybe came from the Sumerians or other cultures? I mean, we know, Judaism and things like that, and even Islam and stuff like that has demons. So what's your opinions on that?
Well, again, I'm going to look through it through a biblical lens.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to agree with what the Bible says what these beings are. I'm going to agree with what it says that these are fallen, rebellious angels that rebelled against God. created a war in heaven, and because of that result, because Satan or Lucifer, Lucifer wanted to be as God and sit as God, and because of that, him and his army of angels got thrust out of heaven as a penalty, and this is what demons are. They're exiled angels, and so they are. They have a superior intellect. They have a superior, form. They're able to transform into any kind of thing that person or figure, or they're able to transform into a relative, mimic its voice, wear its clothes, and so they're capable of great and grave deceit, and because of they're so superior in cunning and intellect, and that's why it's easy for them to deceive people as though they don't exist, because they're deceivers and they're liars, and that's why and the influence is not easily seen, because they have the ability to deceive people, and deceived people do not know they're deceived. That's why it's called deception.
Yeah, absolutely. And, talking about it like that, we look at the fall of the angels, generally assumed to be about 1/3 of the angels.
1/3, yeah.
Because that was the thing I did when I was a kid. I used to imagine if I had demons that there were 2 angels to every demon that was trying to punch me in the face. Like, that's how I thought about it. But yes, that was before man. And so we can take a look that even before Moses left Egypt and things like that, other cultures would be able to see. I mean, a religion is not, if things are true in one religion, that means they exist outside of that religion too.
Right. They're not in a religion.
And angels are, within Judaism, and we assume they are 100% real. That means they exist outside of that. And so right. These other images and things like that we see from other cultures and things like that very much still could be one and the same that are spoken about in the Bible and throughout.
Right. Of course, and every civilization has had their image of evil, images of what the devil is, or a form of the devil, and so it functions outside of the term religion. Yeah. Because devils and demons and fallen angels, they're not Christian. They're not. They're right, yeah. They function outside of what we would deem religion, because so you have to kind of have to understand, they come from the realm of God, right? They come from heaven, and they fell out of relationship with God, not a religion. They fell out of favor with God, and they lost the love of God, not the loss of religion. They lost the relationship.
Well, and one of I was going to kind of bring it around to something that we've been talking about, Stefan, is, I'm just going to throw this out there. The war in heaven, is that the astral plane war that we've been talking about with some other folks?
Or before.
Or even the fallen angels, could they equal the Darrow? I mean,
possibly, but one thing I was thinking, it's interesting because when it comes to religion and UFOs specifically, I'm going to say this, there's a lot of people that think that gods, angels, demons, and things like that were ancient aliens, right? But then there's also this group of people that think that aliens are demons, right? So it's this weird, I don't know, cap on either side, but opposite spectrum. It's really, really interesting. It's something that's starting to pop back up in the UFO community. Are people coming back around saying that aliens and UFOs are demons and the devil and things like that, which is a really interesting thing to me.
I believe that as well. I fall into that camp because, again, going back to it being able to transform into any kind of form, It says, biblically speaking, the Bible says that the devil himself can transform himself into an angel of light, right? So you take the most evil creature who starts to masquerade as this thing that's good. Now that's just whatever form that might take, but that's just one form, and he can transform, or they can transform into anything that they want. So it's not a stretch of the imagination to believe that they can transform themselves into an image of aliens. And, and as the latter days, as we keep going on and on towards the end days, greater deceptions abound. And so there's going to be great deceptions. That could be just one of them.
Yeah. So what you were referencing, I was familiar with that, was 2 Corinthians 11:14. And I always found that verse very, very interesting, because we always looked at it through the eyes going backwards and saying he was the angel of light and transformed into Satan. And it's interesting that this verse says the opposite, says that Satan himself transformed into an angel of light. That's and right. So the question that we always had, always back when we went to Bible school, me and Josh back in the day, was always talking about just evil itself. Did God create evil? Because the angels are said to not have free will like us, yet Satan and those angels got to choose to take the lead, right?
Well, they do have free will. If they didn't have free will, they couldn't choose to love God or rebel against God.
Right.
So there is the example of free will. You can worship him, or you could try to set yourself up as as God instead.
Right.
Yeah. Right. But let me just clear one thing up, because before the fall, Lucifer was the highest, most beautiful being God ever created. He was like the highest angel in heaven, and he was a guardian of over the throne of God, cherubim, and he was built into his form where musical, or things of music that create music, whatever that look like. So, and he was formed with jewels, gold, beryl, onyx, sapphire. So that's why they call him the son of the morning, or the morning star.
Right.
It's because when he moved, he flashed, and it was like Lucifer was heaven's rock star. And angels sang the devil songs in worship. So when Lucifer fell, he became Satan. Satan is a title. It means deceiver, adversary. So when we talk about Satan, Satan is his title, but his name is Lucifer. Mm-hmm. And so that's just something I think is important for the audience to know too.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, I wanted to shift away from the religious talk so that we don't get caught up in that, and really kind of go back to talking about the book a little bit, because, and not just the book, but I mean, you've got some pretty crazy stories in here, and I know those aren't all the stories that are in the book, but what is one story in particular that just keeps you up at night still, of a true tale that you are aware of, or hell, your personal one?
There's a lot. The one that most intrigues me is chapter 2. It's about it's the first fully documented, fully recorded case of demonic possession in American history, and it was reported decades before the Salem witch trials. Mm-hmm. And that's a story that takes place between a 16-year-old girl and a minister of a little town called Groton. It was a frontier town. It was a forest town, not many residents, and it took place in the minister's home. And she started exhibiting some strange behavior, and so he after 2 weeks of observing her, he decided to start journaling, and he wrote down what was happening to this girl for 90 days. He wrote down blow by blow the things that were happening in his home, things that were happening to her. And ultimately, it's a case of possession where she started speaking in other with another voice.
Right. This is Elizabeth Knapp, right?
This is Elizabeth Knapp,
right.
Correct. And so that story gripped me so much. I said, I have to, first of all, I have to write about this story. Second of all, I have to go to these places. So this story actually took me up to Groton, and I was able to actually physically touch the sermons that were preached about on this, written on parchment, yellowed parchment, black flowing script, fragile. I was able to touch these 350-year-old documents, journals, notes. So when you talk about, research, I really went the extra mile to really drive home this story, and that's what you'll find in the book. But that's one of the stories. On the personal level, one of the
here's where it gets real, folks.
Yeah, on the personal story is chapter 3, and that's probably that's the scariest thing I've ever experienced. I've experienced a lot of things. I've experienced a lot of, midnight strangulations, choking, suppressions, stealing my breath, demonic assaults and that of, in that kind of capacity. But this was the first time it had ever manifested itself and physically touched my form, physically touched me. And the story is I had moved into a home a family member had left, and after losing my job, I had an apartment, and so I had to leave, and so I moved into this home because no one was using it. And one night I was there, and I started to smell this chemical rotten sort of smell, and I started going, so I get up, I go downstairs, and I'm trying to sniff out where the source is. It's not the garbage, it's not the trash it's not the
right.
the trash thing, in the sink, and so I'm sniffing around, and then I look up at the AC vent in the ceiling, and I take a chair and I jump up on the chair, and it's coming from the vent. So this rot is blowing in my face, and I say, okay, well, maybe it's something up there. I've smelled dead rats before in the attic and things of that nature. So I get off the chair, and I go and I cut the power to the AC. Jump back on the chair, and the thing is still blowing, that rotten chemical thing still beating on my face without any electrical assistance. It's just blowing on its own. So at this point, I have a sneaky suspicion something demonic is going on.
Something ain't right, yo.
Something's not right in the house. So I go back upstairs. It was late. And I go back upstairs, and I go up to the second, the room was on the second floor. And I go to, I try to go to sleep. And underneath, so beneath my eyes, under my eyelids, I see a flash in the light. And I'm like, the heck was that? And so I roll back over, and then I just kind of like, from the darkness, I hear something call my name, and it says, Michael. It was long and slithering through the darkness. It sounded very close, but very far, like from a cave, but it sounded very close. So I rolled over, and when I rolled over, there was something at my bedside, and it was a figure in black. It was tall, lanky, with crooked shoulders, and you could see a semblance of its face under its hood. Deep set black eyes, just dead. You know, like you have like a shine in your eyes and glimmer in your eyes. This was just pure deadness,
like matte black,
like just dead. And it was looking down at me. Its head was cocked, and its smile was a mocking, menacing smile, and its hand was crawling up my chest, and it was claws, and it was crawling up my chest towards my neck, and that was the first time I felt the spiritual enter the natural. And there was and it was freaky, because part of it was as much as it was a 3D physical form, as much as it was physical, it was spiritual. Because when I looked down at its gown, it was flowing. It was like in rectangular strips of black and gray, and they were moving like underwater. And I remember thinking, like, there's like a really cool movement to its thing, right? But it was as much physical as it was spiritual, and I could see through part of the bottom of that of its cloak or robe, and that's in that form at that time. It was 3:33, so the clock is flashing. 3:33. It's like, red numbers just flashing. And so basically that was the scariest thing, because that was the first time it had I had seen it, and it had touched me, and it was physically touching my form.
Well,
about to really strangle me.
What interests me is that in a lot of ways it sounds very similar to night hag sleep paralysis, but the fact that you said you rolled over and saw where it is really ups the ante here. Because all my experiences that were very similar to that, same shapes, everything, have been during sleep paralysis, night hag type syndrome, and I feel like I would be more scared if I would be able to move, because sleep paralysis, I'm able to in some way go, you know what, it's just a dream, buddy. Like I can kind of trick myself, but if I was able to move, all bets are off. That would definitely.
Yeah, but once it was at my bedside, these things, they come with a paralyzing power. And so I was frozen for a second. It's not sleep paralysis. It's not hallucinations.
That's what I said. The
none
fact
of that
that you
stuff.
rolled over first and were awake doing it. Yeah, it's different.
and the hatred that was emanating from it was like, you just don't feel it on your skin, but you feel it burning through your body. And it was like boiling tar. The menacing hatred this thing had, and the disdain this thing had for me and humanity, it was just so overwhelming. And so it really came with this really dark, terrible power that was capable of paralyzing as well, with it was great fear.
Well, one of the things that I've talked about with Night Hag, Stefan, and I wonder if this is a little bit true here as well, but or an opportunity anyway, is that do these things somehow feed on the fear that they produce in you? And so this thing showed up at your bedside. I'm sure you were afraid, and so was it there to somewhat feed on the fear that you were producing, much in the same way that night hags produce fear in folks, and they stick around. Or even
like an incubus or a succubus feeding off of sexual energy. Does this feed off of your energy?
Well, they want to produce fear, and the opposite of fear is courage. So if you have courage, they don't want that. But no, they produce that fear in you. I mean, it's a very, very terrible thing and terrifying thing to be woken up or to be, it's 3 a.m. So you're kind of like not really with it at that time. And so it's a terrible, frightening thing to kind of experience in the dead of night, So of course it's going to be a sudden shock, coupled with that dread and fear and that emanating power. Yeah. So I think it's just a combo of everything. They really have a great dark power that they're able to paralyze with fear.
Interesting.
So for people that are listening, I'm not, I definitely, don't assume you're a Ghostbuster here. You're no Peter Venkman. Nope. But twofold question here is what are signs that people can look for because we're not, I think there's a big misconception that demons only possessed bodies. They don't just show up in houses, right? There's that big, because movies have kind of made it feel that way. Yeah. But how can people kind of be aware? What are some things they can look for? And then how do they get help? Like that's the big question.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the possession itself is the most extreme form, of course, and that's what fascinates us the most.
Right.
But outside of possession, you have harassment and you have oppression, and you have, there's various forms of spirits that have various functions. And what I mean by that is there's such things as the spirits of fear, or the spirits of suicide, or the spirits of depression. And so when you take a look at all these things, and then, you take a look, let's talk about the spirits of depression.
Okay.
So we talk about the spirits of depression. So what do we do? Well, I'm depressed. I'm going to go to the doctors. I'm going to get some pills, right? Well, the pills don't work. They're not working. So you take more, you take them more, take them more. And, but a lot of times these people are experiencing depressions that are spiritual in nature, being influenced by outside forces without even knowing it.
Right.
And when you take a look at some of these things, and I talk about this in the book, is some people who have killed their kids. I talk about Susan. What's her name? She killed her 5 kids, and she was just God on Zoloft.
Yeah.
And she had said to I believe it was the friend or the doctor, and she says, "Do you believe in Satan?" Because I'm hearing voices, and they're telling me to kill. And that's not the only story. There's 3 other people in here that were saying the same thing. And the thing is that they're trying to remedy a spiritual condition by natural means, and they're never going to get free. So, and that's just one instance. You got, spirits of lust and spirits, just various spirits that have various roles. Right. And then they couple up. One of the stories in the Bible, and this, and it talks about Jesus going, and there's the man in the caves of the Gadarenes, and
right.
And so he goes across. Jesus goes across in the boat, and the guy meets him on the shore, and he casts out. Long story short, he casts out 2,000 demons from the man. Yeah. And so that just tells us that they work in tandem. It's not just sometimes just one spiritual entity, but there's groupings of them. And this guy was going mad. He was cutting himself. He was screaming out in the night. And it was like, he was living in the tombs. And this guy was a real mess. He was naked, and what he did is Jesus casts out these demons, and they go into the swine, and the herd of swine goes down the mountain, and they get drowned into the sea. But that just tells us that doesn't have to be just one spiritual entity, but there can be many operating in the lives of people and we're trying to remedy this spiritual condition by natural means, and that's not going to work apparently.
Yeah, and it's interesting because throughout history we've seen that it's really at the end of the anyone these things can happen to, because you think immediately, oh, you're weak, you're already kind of like doing bad things and blah blah blah. But then, just like we were talking about earlier, there's also many very spiritual people can be attacked like this. Yes. and be possessed as well because they're a target. So
yes. Sure.
It's frightening.
It's very frightening. That's why I wrote the book, because and I just talk about 5 spirits operating operating in the world around us, that just the most familiar or the most common. That says 5. Now, if you're talking about driving out 2,000 demons, no, I don't have a whole book to write about 2,000 demons, but I just wanted to give people the example, the overview of what's happening in the spirit realm, whether they know it or not.
Yeah, Dante's got that book. He's good.
Well, and the follow-up, I think Stefan had a 2-part question. I don't know if you have any guidance for folks who maybe have things going on. Yeah. Where can they, find help?
Or how? Yeah.
Or how?
Right. Well, the only way to combat demons, and the only way to have power or authority over demons, is you need somebody stronger than yourself to drive them out, and that comes in the man Jesus Christ. So when you put your faith and your hope in Jesus Christ, he says, I give you power over all the power of the enemy, to trample on snakes and scorpions and all the power of enemies. So Jesus himself grants us this power over the most demonic, strongest, most intellectual, powerful beings from another world. He grants us this power through himself to be able to combat them and have authority over them. It's only in his name. That's it.
Interesting. Because, I wonder, so Jesus was born and lived and all that 2,000 years ago, over 2,000 years ago. How did they handle these things before that, right? How was that handled in the Old Testament? I'm really not familiar with much in terms of demonology in the Old Testament.
I think they had Judaic exorcists, because there's mention in it, and Jesus asks, well, how do you cast these things out, right? And if I'm not the Son of God, then how do you cast these things out? And so he was basically saying, I am who I say I am, and I have the power I say I have, and I come from where I say I come from, and by the power of exorcising demons, this is the proof. And if this is the proof, and if I can do this and you can't, how do you guys do it? But there's references in there. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but I believe that they had some sort of Jewish or Judaic form of exorcism. I'm not exactly sure what all that entailed, but I believe that they did have that as part of the religion.
Interesting. Thank you. now that I really want to spend some time looking into that, because also would make a badass movie is a Judaic exorcist, way back in the day, going crazy. I love that.
These things have been around a long, long time. Right. This is not demons and everything. It's not something new. They've been here since the creation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Man.
I will. I think we wrap it up here. I want to say thanks again for being on the show. If folks wanted to find more information about your book or about yourself, where could they do that?
Well, they can purchase Demons Among Us on Amazon. There's a Kindle version and there's the paperback version. I recommend the paperback version because I just enjoy holding a book.
Yeah, the smell of the ink on the pages, right?
Yeah, and you get to turn the book cover over at night, and
Right.
you get to experience the fun and terror of putting
And then
this.
you go to read and you're like, there it is. Okay.
Yes. But yeah, you can find that on Amazon. Just type in "Demons Among Us" and look for the big white creepy face. I say that because there's other titles of the same title.
Okay.
And we'll have a link on our website as well, correct, Josh?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, cool. And also you can reach out to me at Instagram at m.r.gorga and also on Facebook, Mr. Gorga.
Fantastic. Well, I'm telling you, man, I could sit here and talk. Josh already sees me. The growing up Catholic in me has I could talk about this stuff all day long. And I wish we had hours and hours, man. But thank you so much for, listening to us, answering our questions, even if we put you on the spot. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. No, this is great. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And we would love to have you back anytime, sir.
Yeah, anytime. Just reach out. Let me know.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gorga. Make sure you guys are going to Amazon or wherever you can find his book. Please go ahead and purchase Demons Among Us because it's the bomb. So,
yeah, and if you like scary stories and they don't keep you up at night, you can just read one, go to sleep and not have crazy dreams, then I highly recommend picking it up and reading it before bed. Read it anywhere though, because it is packed full of just some really creepy and intense accounts.
For sure. But we're going to get out of here. Josh, again, thank you, Mr. Gorga. Again, we'd love to have you on the show anytime. But we're going to get out of here. But before we go, I want to get into our listener story here. I want to remind people they can send their listener stories to us at Fearscape podcast at gmail.com or any of our social medias at Fearscape Pod. Submit a sighting. I don't care. Send them to me. But we have definitely been getting some cool alien UFO ones, and I love those. But send your ghost haunting ones as well. Anyways, this story, Josh, comes from a listener named Sarah from California. And it goes a little something like this.
It was the day that Malaysian Airline 370 went missing. I had been on a conference call with my lawyer to discuss setting my lawsuit against Little Caesars. Long story now, but I will go into detail if you'd like sometime down the road. I began to tingle all over my body. I have experienced this tingle in the past, but only as a result of excitement, like enjoying my favorite ice cream or seeing my uncles. This time I was getting intense visions of color and geometries. My lawyer hung up on the conference call because I had been unresponsive for at least 7 minutes as he tried to get my attention several times. My skin became pale and I defecated myself. When I woke up, a gray, thin being was hyperventilating over my useless body. I was numb. He blinked uncontrollably, and immediately I felt calm. He had the smallest genitalia I'd ever seen, inconsistent with beings that I've seen in the past. He waved his arm over me and I fell back asleep, only to awake naked back in my bed several hours later.
That's really interesting because a lot of, and I was actually thinking about this today, in a lot of the depictions that people draw about all the different alien species or whatever that are supposedly visiting Earth, none of them are ever drawn with any type of genitalia or reproduction.
I know, yet we talk about hybrids all the time and how there's all this stuff going on, and maybe it's a husbandry type environment, or it's a suit. I mean, that's been a number of times that it's their space suit. So,
which, I mean, if so, that's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it very much is. But yeah, Sarah, I hope that nothing bad happened, because that was that would be extra frightening. It's already scary enough to see that, and then to wonder if something like that happened.
Well, and she said, unlike she had seen before, so it makes me think that she's probably got a few
Oh, she does. Yeah. When we talked about this, she had said that she's had many experiences, but this was the most recent. And here's a little tale for you. So I don't know if that was a pun intended or not. But anyways, thank you, Sarah. Again, send in those listener stories to us. We love them. We will read them every episode. But anyways, we're gonna jet and get out of here. It is time to go to bed or home or whatever you're doing, folks. It's time. But Josh, thank you so much as usual for being on.
Yeah.
This with me. Appreciate
Well, you know
it.
how I know it's time? Because I checked my wristwatch.
Oh, yeah. So make sure you guys are joining our Patreon, patreon.com/fearscapepod or fearscapepodcast.com/support. Those are two ways to get onto our Patreon. We only have one level there. It's $9 a month. It's fantastic. We fill you with all kinds of great information. If you've been following the show, you know that we have been getting emails from the man claiming to be Terry Wrist, and boy, oh boy, has it been remarkable, the things that we've recently found out, gotten some information on. I mean, we spent a 2-hour call with me, Santosh, and Olav just looking at coordinates and
digging into stuff, and
it is fascinating.
Hearing, through Olaf, Alan Greenfield's thoughts on the whole matter. So it was
Absolutely,
brilliant.
yeah. We've got Alan Greenfield's, approval to take a look at this and digging deeper, as he's, he feels pretty good about it too, that we're on the right path. So we're going to keep on keeping on with this, and we're going to share little bits here. But, this is a great way for you to help us support us, or even just be a part of it, since we don't have a full podcast to donate or to dedicate to it. But yeah, Josh, let's get out of here, man. MR Gorga, check him out. Demons Among Us. This has been Stefan. I will catch you on the flip side, and don't forget to keep your eyes on the skies.
This has been Josh. The truth is now.
And remember, folks, hold those blankets extra tight, because things tend to get spooky when you're listening to Fearscape. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
We hope you have enjoyed this guidepost on the road of high strangeness with us. And we thank you, as always, for listening and joining our caravan to the weird and unknown. Please consider supporting us as we continue our journey to find the answers we all seek. fearscapepodcast.com/support.
You